As someone who loves ocean liners, how lucky have I been to have the ultimate in my realm for basically all of my ship-loving life. No matter how you look at her, the Queen Mary remains an object of beauty and power. She's been through rough times, both during her active transatlantic career, which spanned from 1936 until 1967, and her retirement in Long Beach has been punctuated with countless ups and downs. But thankfully, things are looking up for this historic lady. This is my fourth update on the Mary since she reopened after the pandemic, and a lot of progress continues to be made. In this video, I'll show you what's been done over the past year or so, and we'll also visit some of the areas that I wasn't able to get to in the prior updates. So let's head on board via the A-deck entrance, past the hotel reception desk that was originally the cabin or first-class lobby. We'll continue up the main staircase with its burled woods, etched glass panels, and nickel railings, past the main deck travel office, and onwards up to the landing between main deck and promenade deck to our first preservation pit stop. In September of 2024, to commemorate the 90th anniversary of Queen Mary's launching, a replica of the Royal Standard presented to the ship by her godmother, Queen Mary, was installed in the spot where the original was mounted during the ship's Cunard career. Just a few steps aft of here on prom deck, in what was originally the second funnel hatch, there's a new meeting place called the Embarkation Room. Meanwhile, the giant Lego model of the Queen Mary that was displayed here has been moved downstairs near the engine room exhibit. Just a couple days ago, Mike and Mary Rohrer from the QMI Restore the Queen group held a fundraiser here, hosted by Chief Officer Paul Jasek and Captain James Sanders. Historian Dr. Margarita Jarabek spoke of the ongoing preservation of Queen Mary's priceless Art Deco artworks. One of those key preservation efforts, with funding and awareness raised by QMI Restore the Queen, is the restoration of the utterly magnificent gesso relief Unicorns in Battle, which towers over the Queen's Salon, the former cabin and first-class lounge. We had a chance to see the work in progress, which is expected to go on through early March at least, detailing the cleaning, repair, and painting of this panel's exquisite details. Unicorns in Battle was created by Alfred J. Oakley and Gilbert Bays. Another exciting and new venue, the Queen Mary Archive Museum, is on Port Promenade deck in the recent wedding office space that was originally the post-war installed radio telephones office. For now, this space is only open to guests participating in the VIP tour, but I understand there might be other opportunities to visit soon. In the meantime, this space houses a combination of key original artworks and artifacts and a number of in-service treasures and ephemera. In the inboard forward corner, there are original shuffleboard and horse racing elements, various furnishings, and the leather panel bulkhead with its trio of clocks. In the outboard aft corner, there are two magnificent paintings, Madonna of the Tall Ships by the renowned Kenneth Shoesmith, which was originally in the tourist, later cabin class library, and Charles Pear's evocative painting of the Mauretania heading to the breakers that was originally in the tourist, later cabin class smoking room. In the outboard forward corner, you'll find the insanely beautiful etched glass panel Fish and Aquarium by Charles Cameron Bale from the tourist, later cabin class pool. And these gorgeous glass pieces, Sun and Moon by George Ramone, are from the former cabin, later first class playroom. Other in-service furnishings and artifacts on display have been stowed away after thankfully not having found buyers when the city of Long Beach auctioned just about every loose item on board after her arrival in 1967. There's another extraordinary piece in the inboard aft corner, which is a bird's eye maple and metal foil panel by Pindar Davis that was originally in the aft starboard cabin, later first-class private dining room. And right next to that is water, a molded glass panel from the cabin, later first-class dining room by Walter and Donald Gilbert. There's a Siemens telegraph from the aft steering station on A deck, and a simply stunning bronze grilled door from one of the private dining rooms by Walter and Donald Gilbert. Flanking the grille door are bronze sculptures from the cabin, later first-class lounge, Jupiter and Europa by Nicholson Babb, and the Sea King's Daughter by Gilbert Bays. There's also a plaque from the city of Southampton presented on her final departure, and a display with the 1940s nurse's uniform and vintage life-saving gear. Now let's head a little bit farther aft to a couple of spaces on the starboard side of Promenade Deck. Paneled in quilted maple, this beautiful vestibule leads to the King's View and Victoria rooms, which are carved out of the starboard promenade. The King's View is aft of the Chelsea restaurant and adjoins the former cabin and first-class smoking room, now called the Royal Salon. While not original, this and the slightly smaller Victoria have great views of the Long Beach skyline through the promenade windows. On the Victoria's inboard bulkhead, there's an homage to three of Hollywood's biggest stars at the time of the Queen Mary's debut. Now let's head up one level to Sundeck. Restoration work here continues with the bulkheads and davits cleaned and freshly painted, and the teak decking looking freshly scrubbed. And this is the smaller of the John Brown Builders plates on the Sundeck terrace overlooking the bow. And speaking of the bow, the forecastle is once again open to visitors. Accessed on forward main deck, the rotted teak here has been replaced with ply. Keeping in mind, of course, that teak wood is extremely expensive and/or endangered, this is probably going to be the way it looks for the near future. But having access to this realm of capstans, bollards, and anchor chains once again is well worth that trade-off. You can even handle a trio of Siemens brass telegraphs here that once controlled the anchors. One of my favorite things about being on Queen Mary's forecastle are the views of her face or superstructure and a glance over the side, imagining that mighty bow cutting through the Atlantic. Now let's head back along that platform on main deck for another view or two of that layer cake superstructure and its glorious, gracious curves. Our next stop is at the top of that cake, the navigating bridge, which is now open to the public. Although the outer portions of the bridge wings remained closed off for repairs, you are still able to get great views of those three beautiful stacks from here. Okay, fellow Poseidon Adventure fans, it's time to cue up your John Williams soundtrack. Of course, this is where the captain, played by the late Leslie Nielsen, argues for more ballast against the wishes of the evil Mr. Lenarkos. But aside from being a living set in the Poseidon Adventure, this wheelhouse is where the commands were given to the Mary's power plant when she ruled the Atlantic. From its first captain, Sir Edgar Britton, to Captain Treasure Jones, who brought her to Long Beach, this space is legendary and still impressive with its polished brass and its double steering stations. These enduring double-headed Siemens telegraphs were a fixture on every Cunard bridge until the advent of the QE2 in 1968. Back in the 80s and 90s, you could handle the magnetic phones on the aft bulkhead, but now they're protected by a plexiglass panel. On the starboard side, you'll find the stabilizer controls, and behind that, the officer's chart room. On the port side, there's the signal flags, and behind that, the captain's chart room. We'll pay the wheelhouse a parting glance, and then take a peek at the starboard wing, and from there, a view back down to the newly added shuffleboard court on main deck. Now let's head down to the cake's next level, sports deck. After being closed for repairs, you can now look into the officers' quarters here. On the starboard side, you'll find the lair of the legendary Commodores, the captain's quarters, where the likes of Marlene Dietrich and the Duke and Duchess of Windsor partied. On the port side of the captain's quarters were the staff captain's quarters. And next to that, the slightly more modest chief engineer's stateroom with that beautiful red runner rug. A bit farther aft on sports deck, in that lofty space between the first and second funnels, there's now a pickleball court where there was once deck tennis. Good for the Queen Mary for keeping up with the times. Judging by my own skills, I do wonder how many balls go overboard here. And if you head aft from there along that gorgeous teak decking on the starboard side, the former cabin, later first-class games area, now sports a makeshift putting green. Located on forward sundeck, the tea room was carved out of former crew space after the ship came to Long Beach. Larger windows were added here, providing great views over the bow and of the Long Beach skyline. Now used primarily for private functions, the 100-capacity space once housed the Princess Diana exhibit and was used for special afternoon teas. Near the tea room's entrance, you'll find another pair of those exquisite bronze-grilled doors from the former cabin, later first-class dining room, by Walter and Donald Gilbert. And just aft of that, former crew space that was last used as the Sundeck Bakery. And yes, I covered the observation lounge in one of my prior updates, but it's always nice to take another peek at this gorgeous space on forward promenade deck. Let's head down from promenade deck to main deck via the stairs directly after the observation lounge to the only surviving fully intact third-class, later tourist-class space, the Mauretania room. Originally the third-class garden lounge, the Mauretania can host up to 130 guests. Paneled in sycamore and pommel with mahogany trim, it's a prime example of the British liner style of the pre- and post-war era. Ships like P&O's Himalaya and Arcadia, or Union Castle Line's Edinburgh Castle, were filled with public rooms like this. There's a spectacular marquetry panel on the forward center bulkhead, and handsome mirrored recesses in the forward corners. In addition, there's a pair of bookcases lining the aft bulkhead. The room is shown here while set up for the Steamship Historical Society of America's annual meeting this past November, which featured guest presenters like my friend Dr. Nelson Arnstein, who spoke of the 1959-built SS Rotterdam, which is currently preserved in her namesake city. And here the room is set up for the Steamship Historical Society's dinner that evening, where yours truly had the honor of speaking about the great mid-20th century ocean liners and cruise ships. For more information about this prestigious group of ship lovers, please go to www.sshsa.org.
Later, which is one of the greatest modernist ships ever.
Let's continue our visit on the fantail on aft A deck, where stairs lead down to the isolation ward and the infirmary. One of the few surviving working spaces on the Mary, this display area is equal bits eerie and fascinating. Housed in the stern by the former capstan controls and steering gear, it must have been very uncomfortable with the sounds and vibration of the machinery below. The linoleum-decked footprint of the infirmary is a reverse horseshoe that conforms to the shape of the Mary's cruiser's stern. On display are plans, some interesting Cunard-era bulletins and notices, a list of crew members who died on board, and the basket used for mid-Atlantic rescues in 1955, 1956, and 1962. On the starboard side of the exhibit, you can see how the infirmary itself was set up with its wooden bunks. As all of her cabins are different, I thought I'd add my latest room for the night, cabin 154 on port main deck. It's a former first-class cabin with a harbor view, glowing woodwork, and some beautiful surviving bits of Clyde-built craftsmanship. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here and get ready for a good night's sleep. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this latest update. If you'd like to see the others, please visit my Queen Mary playlist. Good night, everyone.
And don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thank you very much.